We continue our civic education, and today we want to look at the participation of special interest groups, women, youth, in the conversation that's happening in the country right now. Because everything that we are saying here about, reject finance bill, or amend the appropriations bill, or cut back the budget on spending, it's public finance management. And our conversation on public finance management today, with specific focus to the special interest groups, is our partnership with URAIA. We are joined by Danpaul Andengah. He's a development practitioner in civic education and budget facilitation at URAIA, and Caroline Nyamu, who's a governance and human rights specialist. Good morning, Caroline. Good morning, Danpaul.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Caroline?
Very good. Thanks for having us here.
Very good to have you here. Dompi, welcome back.
Thank you.
You've been here before.
Glad to be here.
Karibuni sana. Siti, why don't you welcome our guests with you know what?
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Okay. Too large a morsel chokes the child.
Too large a morsel chokes the child. Caroline, you're smiling. Well, because it resonates with you, right? What do you think the proverb is telling us?
Don't bite off more than you can chew. Yeah, and it will be there. The morsel will, in its entirety, be there to be eaten, and that's the purpose of the morsel. So, yeah, take it slow, I would say.
Uma kidogo kidogo.
Slow but sure.
Kidogo kidogo. Danpaul, what's your interpretation of it?
Actually, I would have thought of what Senior has talked about. Kula kidogo kidogo. Yeah, kidogo kidogo. And then you are finally home. Yeah, that's it.
Don't be gluttonous.
Well, you'll finish, you as he says, even if you take small, but you'll end up finishing it.
Yeah.
But it won't cause you problems.
No.
You won't choke on it.
No.
You won't suddenly find, you're constricted. But you're eating at it bit by bit by bit by bit.
Do things bit by bit,
Yes.
progressively.
Yes.
Okay. Mwendo wa pole. Okay. Now, our conversation today is about public finance management, and then looking at the participation of women, youth, and other interest groups in these conversations. I want to start with you, Danpaul. You know, you've been engaging, you're involved in civic education, the budget facilitation in communities, and doing a lot of awareness creation. How would you rate the participation of women, youth, persons with disabilities, and others, the elderly, in matters of public finance management and budgeting?
So thank you so much again. So in terms of participation for SIG, their rating is dismal, very dismal indeed. It is very dismal because of the social setup. It is dismal because of the way we have characterized the SIGs to look less of human. It is dismal because of lack of information. And what information, actually? Many times when I have an opportunity to speaking to them, I say, there is the information that you need, there is the disinformation that they don't need, the misinformation as well. So that put up together makes it very hard for the SIG to participate effectively in public management.
So you're saying the system is not conducive for them?
Not at all. Not at all. Actually, when you look at many research reports that have come up, when you look at in terms of their participation in governance, participation of SIGs in governance, it's very dismal. Why dismal? Because of various, societal problems. Okay, and coupled with with governance structure as it is today, so. That makes it very hard. But I am encouraged because the more we interrogate them, the more we inform them, the more we educate them on what must be said and to who it must be said to, they are little by little coming up.
Okay.
We thank God.
Caroline, you've been in this space as well, in matters of governance, in matters of rights and advocating for rights. Would you say that all these people are facing similar challenges? Are these universal problems? Are you saying that the youth are not participating because of the same challenges that the women are facing, because of the same challenges that the persons with disabilities and the elderly are facing?
I think, first of all, I'd just like to maybe backtrack a little bit and remind us that in the Constitution, these groups are referred to as previously marginalized. So there was a time in our history in this country where women did not even have the right of citizenship. In our cultures, we talked about women and young people are there to be seen and not to be heard. If you were a family who had a child with disability, we hid the children. We didn't want them to be seen. So there is a history that we're coming from where these people were almost in a sense invisible. So I think it's good to appreciate that history, but they're not a homogeneous group. The challenges that young people face are not quite the same challenges that persons with disabilities face, are not the same challenges that women face. But they all do face challenges, and these challenges stem from that historical marginalization. So it's important to recognize that we've only had the Constitution for almost the new Constitution for almost 14 years. We're coming from an independence history of 60 years. So we're trying to undo 50 years of making this group of people invisible, bring them to the light. So the opportunities that, say, women have enjoyed when it comes to education may be, somewhat different from the opportunities that men have enjoyed. We know, again, in our maybe traditional setup, boys would be given the opportunity to go to school, and I know that I am probably opening a can of worms, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. But the opportunities have not been as broad or open for these groups that we're talking about. So appreciating that history and then seeing what it is that we're trying to undo so that they can occupy the space at the table. So what the Constitution has tried to do is make the space wider at the table so everybody has a say.
But then, when you talk about public finance management, if we start with the basic conversation of the village, it's budgeting. It's identifying priorities, and that is happening now in the CIDPs and all. Yes, community participation in identifying your priority needs, and then your needs, and then prioritizing those needs, and then saying, so this is what we want, and this is the amount of money that this would cost for us to realize this need, and this is how we are apportioning money into that, right? Am I right or am I wrong, Danpaul? Because I see you looking like I know you're a bit off track here. Am I?
You know me. No. Yes and no. First, if we were to look at having a complete discussion about budgeting at the grassroots level, so we have the right holders and we have the duty bearers. So we have two stakes in here. So these two stakes each have a hand in the budget. And allow me to situate so that we have some sort of conversation. If we were doing a budget discussion at conceptual level, at formulation level, for example, then the issue of planning is important, very important. So what is it that we plan for is equally important. Now, the duty bearers have a higher hand because they already have understood what it is that the previous year has spent. So based on the gaps identified within the previous year, they already have an idea in terms of expenditure going forward. So when we're having a discussion at formulation at the grassroots level, we have a group of stake who have information, which information, if not shared and shared very well, will lead to bad planning. And when it turns out to be bad planning, it goes all the way to approval, to execution, and you can finish the statement. So ideally, that's the position as it is.
And maybe I'd just like to add to what Danpi is saying in terms of you've got the duty bearer, they've got the information, but remember that this person that you're planning for or budgeting for actually is intelligent. And I think that is something that those who hold power on our behalf need to start appreciating, that we're not sort of empty. Yes, well, you said it. But people do. The fact that I'm a young person at the age of 18, I must have been doing something right to be alive today, or a woman of 35. I must have been doing something right to be alive today, to have my small kiosk or whatever it is, that I can actually make valuable input into budget matters, into how I want my money spent. And I think that's really important for those who are making those decisions and planning on our behalf, bearing in mind that it is delegated power. We all can't, have 50 million budgets for the country. So we've delegated them to do this on our behalf. But we do actually have something in between our ears.
May sound like an obvious answer, but what would show us that the opinions, thoughts, very existence of these particular groups, or anybody for that matter, are not involved in the decisions that are being made by those who hold power?
I mean, again, the money conversation ultimately is about leading to service delivery. So looking at the quality of services that citizens are getting. A couple of years ago, we were doing some work in with some partners in Nakuru. And simple things like a health center does not have wheelchairs, does not have ramps for persons with disability to access the facility, does not have toilet facilities that are persons with disability friendly, tells you that there has been these people are not being seen in how the money that's been planned for, or how that money is being used. So there are those evidences that tell you that the planning hasn't really incorporated the priorities, the needs of these young people, of persons with disability. You go to health facilities, you don't have a sign language interpreter, and they'll say, huyo hao ni watu wale, and they're dismissed. You don't have commodities around sexual reproductive health. So that tells you that the priorities, the needs of these groups are not being considered when budgets are being made. They're not being considered. Do you think it's an issue of lack of resources, or are we just saying that there is a whole lack of just inclusion completely? Because, and I ask this because that's the reason that you'll be given often, that we just don't have enough resources that spreads across board to be able to accommodate everybody or everything. Is that an argument worth its salt?
But even if that were to be the argument, even if that were to be the argument, so what is priority therefore? The question should be, what is the priority? We have priority 1, 2, 3 to 5. So what makes us identify priority number 1? That priority number 1 can only be identified when there is the inclusion. Because the inclusion part will tell you this must be, for example, this must be on board. For example, if we're talking about a health, last time I was here, I was talking about education. If we're talking about the number of students in a school, and only 35, you remember the figure I gave? Yeah, I'm sure you checked after I left. If we're only talking about 35,000 for Nairobi, for example, it doesn't show this desegregation for the children who are able differently. It does not show. But even if it was showing, we have no classic case where we can say we have an institution built specifically that serves that minority. So that tells you already that priority bit is lacking. That priority bit is lacking because there's no inclusion. The lack of inclusion in decision making makes things work the way they do.
So then should we then not change our conversation? Because we seem to assume that by saying that these things have not been done or have not been seen to be done, those in leadership and position of authority ought to realize. We've said this enough times. If they still don't realize it, should we then not change our conversation?
Yep, exactly.
Because it is clear that what we are saying is falling on deaf ears.
I hear what you say. It's as if you already know what's happening today in the Republic of Kenya. That's exactly what is happening today. The young men and women you have seen on the streets are simply saying, and thank you so much for the estimates that you have presented before us. But those estimates
Do not represent us.
simple.
And that's what I was asking from the very beginning. Is it because they don't have agency? Is it because there's no structure, a legal structure that permits them to participate? Or is it because there's a structure that blocks their participation?
Yeah, I mean, is there no mechanism? I disagree. I mean, the Constitution, and we always say that it's one of the most progressive, has expanded the space for the voices, for agency. So we can't say that it is the lack of legal instruments. We can't say it is the lack of a framework. I think I would say it's the latter. Again, we were just chatting a while back with Dan P. We're coming from a culture where citizens their voices were not meant to be heard. We make decisions for you, and you must accept that we know everything, and therefore we make decisions for you, and be satisfied with what little we give you. And so when it comes to the need to change the conversation, it becomes imperative that we turn this thing on its head, and that's what the Constitution so to turn this on its head, that when you ask, is it just that we don't have enough resources? Well, you haven't actually asked me how you want us to use the scarce resources that we have. Of course, we're always going to have limited resources, but remember, I said the people we're dealing with are actually intelligent. They're full of wisdom, and they've got ingenuity. I mean, we've seen it. Certainly, it's been spotlighted this last couple of weeks as we've seen the young people take up the budget, the budget bill. Estimates, the finance bill, interrogate them and ask, why are you allocating this much amount of money for this seemingly unimportant expenditure, and yet you want me to pay for that? That isn't someone who is clueless. And so there needs to be a change, that when we're doing the planning, when we're doing the budgeting, it's not so much that we're planning for you. This is what we have. These are the plans that we have for you. But turning that on its head and saying, what would you have us do or plan with the limited resources that we have?
What we're having a conversation this morning is how the youth, women, persons with disabilities, the elderly, and other special interest groups can participate better in public finance management conversations around the country. And this is part of our, civic education programming with URAIA. Danpaul Andengah is a development practitioner in civic education and budget facilitation, whereas Caroline Nyamu is a governance and human rights specialist. Our constitution, from the preamble, it says, "We, the people of Kenya, we, acknowledging the supremacy of God, honoring those who fought for our independence, proud of our diversity, respectful of our environment, committed to nurturing and protecting the well-being of our nation, recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans, exercising our sovereign and inalienable right to determine the form of governance our country, and having participated fully in the making of this constitution, adopt, enact, and give this constitution to ourselves and to our future generations." So we have first of all started by owning, all of us, okay? Owning. And then we go into the chapter 1, which says that sovereignty belongs to we, the people. Mm-hmm. And we shall exercise it in accordance with the constitution. And then it goes ahead to say that we acknowledge that we have a role to safeguard, to protect our constitution, and to run our country. Then at what point do we come back and start saying that we expect those others to make things work for us? At what point do we stop participating and start saying it is because of this and the other we don't participate? Yes, there will be systems maybe that may not be working, but what are we doing to correct the systems that are not working? We are the sovereign. If the youth feel that they are not involved in budget making at local level, at national level, what have they done about it? Are they aware that there's a budget? Are the women aware that there's a budget? Are persons with disability aware that there's a budget? Have they participated, or are they waiting for the invitation to participate?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good and important question. And I see it in two ways. Or rather, I will say there is a collective responsibility here. Yes, as citizens, we have dropped the ball. Let me just say that. But I think as well, I remember the history that we're coming from, where the practices and what the aspiration of the Constitution has is not something that we practiced before, say, 2010. So making information accessible, because when you have information, you're able to make decisions. You're able to take steps. But when you don't have that information, you don't even know what it is that you're asking. And those who you'll recall after the 2013 elections, there was a crisis in Makueni. And part of the challenge was that the legislators in Makueni did not want money allocated to civic education. Mm-hmm. Kiambu is having the same challenge, where legislators are not willing to put money into civic education. How are citizens going to be able to know what to ask if they don't have the information? That's number one. But on the other hand, there are places where citizens have taken matters into their own hands. They are asking questions in particularly marginalized parts of this country. So there are things that we can do, and thankfully, we have the likes of Dan P, who go around here like John the Baptist, making
preparing
this
the way.
Yes, preparing the way and making this information known. And I think if the discussions in the last couple of weeks has done anything, it's just highlighted that we need to step up our game as citizens and look for this information, because those who are required to make it available to us, unfortunately, will not do that unless compelled to do it. We've got counties where citizens have gotten into trouble for asking for this information, or they've just been barred, but have stayed at it and are making a difference. So we've got to be a little bit more less passive. Let me just say that.
Yes.
I don't want to use words that could.
Let me actually say, I think we need to be a little bit more aware. Aware, like you said earlier, this constitution was seeking to turn this thing on its head. And if we truly say that we fully participated in giving unto ourselves this constitution, then we wanted to turn this thing on its head. So even where there is, difficulties in accessing information, we have put it in our constitution that there will be mechanisms to make sure that we can remove those stumbling blocks if we engage. If we move away from the period prior to 2010, where we were victims, to the period post 2010, where we are the sovereign. Don't be.
And I hear you. I hear you pretty well. And again, allow me to begin from where Senior has stopped. The Constitution is very clear from what we've talked about, the preamble, the first chapter. If you went to article number 10, if you went to 174, all the way, if you went to County Government Act, 2012, speaks about why the public must participate in decision-making in any governance at every level. It's very clear. But the second part is, while it is in black and white on paper, have we put breath in that black and white on paper? The answer is no. It is no, because of what she already mentioned in what happened in Makueni and then later changed. It is no because of what she has mentioned in Kiambu that is struggling. It is no. I was here last time. And I spoke to you about the public participation department that is actually on its knees in Nairobi. And as I sit here, I'm on the technical group trying to help them come up with, some sort of system that can have the department work. It has a skeleton sort of staff. Even the budget in itself alone, the department does not have. So how do we even expect that they'll do what they are mandated to do? So that is number one. Number two is we, like Senior had mentioned, we have coming in from a system where we were used to massage. We give you information for you to consume. We do what we must do. The lowest part. We moved out of there, came to the second stage that was about tokenism. I call you into a meeting, I pay you something, and take what I say to be what you want. And the wording muheshimiwa therefore, because you pay for my coming and you pay for my going back and you do this for me, as if it was not a right. I can tell you, the last 10 or so years have not gone to waste. Because now, as we speak, the SIGs have known what their rights are. And they have gone beyond that right. They want to engage and engage meaningfully. Allow me to go further. What you see happening today would not happen if those young boys and girls did not participate in the entire process of that budgeting, as it were. You remember when the circular came out? Not very many people looked at the circular. Not very many people looked at the circulars. But we had to make sure that organized groups are taken through the circular, as it were. Then the estimates were set out. We had to make sure that those young men and women and the marginalized go through the estimates and look at specifically their areas of interest. And when they identified gaps, I can tell you for free, I'm aware that we have not less than 50 memorandums that were done by these groups to show their displeasure, to tell the government, look, thank you for the process, but can you get these inputs? Can you remove one? Can you add the other? That was not listened to, and what they do? Sovereign power belongs to me. And that's what they have taken. It's coming a bit too late for the duty bearer to say, well, can we have a discussion? Why wasn't there a discussion before that?
True. So there are many layers through all of this and how they play out. And although some of them are vested in social science, it's not a science in the sense that it's formulaic. You will not say, X times Y equals. You won't be able to do that in this case, because some of these movements are then organic. After all, we've seen some of the institutions that have been set up happen because one person, for example, decided to stand up to the status quo and said, let things change in this manner. So with something that is organic in nature, kind of like what's happening in Kenya today, whereby there were no murmurings or rumblings of this even 6 months ago. And to the momentous place that it has gone to today, I dare say that there's no going back on that it is clear and evident that you will not be able to shove anything down the throats of Kenyans. Not anymore. I mean, not like this, because it's clear in your mind that, okay, there will be some kind of pushback. Now, towards the establishment of that status quo, where it is clear in the minds of people that, you know what, we will participate in this, and it is critical that we have an understanding that it must happen. How then can there be an establishment of systems whereby not only is it expected, but it is practiced, and that those who then are the duty bearers know? It's kind of like you're waiting. We know that it's going to come. We expect you to bring it so that we can do this together. How can you see that established?
Yeah. And the great thing is that it's begun to happen. We don't hear many of these stories, but I can tell you, in a county like Baringo, the legislators will not consider a budget submission from the executive unless they have received submissions from the citizens. And they learned this the hard way. They, in the 2017 elections, I think, refused to listen to the citizens. And, well, you know what happened. And so as a matter of self-preservation, they now listen, and they want those memorandas that Danp is talking about. And part of it is their own attempt to self-educate, because they are coming into this space without the budget knowledge that the citizens have. So it is beginning to happen, and there are pockets of this. It's growing, especially with the work that the likes of Danp do around the budget. But I think the first thing that is really, really important, and leveraging on what's been going on in the last couple of weeks, is citizens need to organize. We need to organize. And it doesn't have to be a big movement. But I say, for example, I have a particular interest and a concern in maternal health. I'm sure there's 5 other people who are concerned about this. Let's get together. Let's get angry about it. Let's ask the questions that we need to ask. And then let's get people in, like Danp, to what should we be asking for? These are our frustrations. I'm concerned, or I'm, about the quality of education. I'm sure there's 10 other people who are concerned and interested about it. Organize. You must organize. I know that, getting the information, getting the knowledge may not be necessarily the first thing that you do, but organize. And then once you organize, get capable. Get the information, ring around. I mean, the likes of URAIA, the likes of International Budget Partnership, there's information, there's knowledge that is been synthesized, and you can make use of that. But if you don't organize, the challenge is, I am just one person. What can I do? And people lose heart. People lose the drive, because I'm just one person. Who's going to listen to me? But you organize. Certainly, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, when your voice is bigger, when your voice is amplified, people are going to pay attention.
Where did these young people get this energy from? What do you think was the driving force behind them organizing? Because it didn't take a day. They must have been doing this for over a period of time. What made them get to the point where they say, you know something, we need to go to the streets and talk about this? Because that conversation didn't start and end in Nairobi. It is all over the country. So you cannot pinpoint and say it is this. What drove them to that point?
Anger, I would say.
Over what exactly?
When you're brought to your knees, when you've got nothing to look forward to, when your life doesn't seemingly matter, if you've got nothing to lose, you've got nothing to lose.
Do you think there was a realization that perhaps they themselves, everything Eric was pointing out, that the role that the Constitution gives them was something they had ignored and they had not taken it to heart, and that now is when they're realizing, wait a moment, we actually have this ability. We actually allowed, we are citizens of this country, we are actually allowed to do certain things. Do you think that realization is what they have arrived at?
If I were to pick off from Senior so that she crowns it, from 2010, you and I know that we have had the Constitution. You like calling it new Constitution?
Not anymore.
Well, I don't know. There are people who like calling it new Constitution. This, the Constitution I'm holding on to. People call it new Constitution. I don't know. So we had an old Constitution, isn't it?
We did.
Okay. So since the time this new Constitution, for purposes of learning today.
The 2010 Constitution.
Thank you. So we can now call it 2010, not new Constitution. When it was promulgated 14 years ago, Senior has said, everybody has seen it like you have a Bible in your room, and a Quran or somewhere, or for Veda or something. You know, the books that we all read. And how many of us read those books and actually internalize those books? Or internal content in that book? Good Christian, how much do you know about Prophet Elijah, for example? Is it practical today? But now it comes a time when even in that same Bible, Prophet Hosea says, look, I think my people are perishing because they're lacking something. What? Knowledge. So that knowledge power that Senior has spoken to is what the members of or the youth, or the youthful, the boys and girls, and of course the marginalized have realized. So we have this power, real, and we can use it, yes. We can draw back that power, yes, and try to participate in a system that is so closed up to a point they went to their knees, like Senior has said. And of course, when you press up somebody to a point of marginal utility, you know what happens. That's the point we are at. So they are saying no, and it's not going to be business
as usual.
As usual. Not because there's a contention between themselves and the duty bearers. No. They have a point they are trying to say. They are simply saying, can you listen to us? We are here, living and around, and we must be heard. And not only be heard like flower girls, but we must be part
of the conversation. It's a good thing, because now it's that realization. The Constitution, like you're saying, has been like the Gideon's Bible in a lodging. You will go in there, you'll find it. You just don't read it. You'll wake up tomorrow morning, shower, leave, right? But finally, somebody has opened the page and they're seeing, this is there. And there's something that has driven them to open the page. But the Constitution has been there and has been giving you this power to do it, and has been giving you this authority. Now, if we say that this is the beginning of a new momentum and that there's a new awakening, then it means that we can participate better. It means that, like the way you were saying about organization, it means that resident associations can now realize when we have issues about garbage, about street lights, about roads accessing, about access to health facilities in our neighborhood and schools and daycares and kindergartens and ECDs for our young children, we can organize and we can talk about them. When Boda Bodas and market groups and associations can realize we have issues that are common, we can talk about them, and we have an avenue and we actually have a right to participate and to engage. So I go back to, it's been a lack of that self-awareness that has like sort of been holding us back. And this is a very good thing that's happening because it's opening us up to
It's catalytic.
Yes.
And it's an opportunity we dare not waste. I think the pain that we're feeling, because every day or every year, there's more that you have to pay. But when you look at what you're getting back, it's a bit like the kiosks where we go to buy chapo. The chapo is now 25 bob, but the size has shrunk. So, kidogo it will become the size, the diameter of a mandazi, then it will become the diameter of a mahamri, but you're still paying more, and seeing this has caused people to get angry, and I think we should be angry because someone came and said, if you give me this responsibility, I will do this. Eric, they wouldn't have hired you if you didn't tell a good story about your capabilities. But you probably wouldn't have stayed in this job, if you.
They didn't match
exactly what you said.
What I promised.
They'd have said, nice knowing you, but have a nice life. And I think it's time we also started seeing ourselves as citizens, as employers. These are our employees. They are not our masters. The Shamba la Wanyama has changed. There's new management in town, and it's the citizens, because we've given ourselves this constitution.
Yeah.
So we've got to care. And again, we were just chatting with Danpi, and we're saying these things are not new. There is an activist in middle 1800s who said that we must keep those in power in check, because if we don't continue to do oversight, the Democrat in office is going to turn into a despot.
In 1852 it was that statement.
And they could see, because it was happening.
Well, if you're talking about that, look at the American Constitution. The sovereignty, we borrowed heavily from them. They even clearly understand that sometimes you're not able to change by what you call democratic means. So they allow you to use force. If you think I am merely speaking, look it up. The citizenry are allowed. It gets to a point where this thing isn't working. Remove the people you don't want. But that's the American Constitution. You see, the laws are put in place, in my mind, with the understanding that people will do the contrary. So you put in a structure that everybody understands, and everyone is being told this is how you're going to abide by, in order for you to live in harmony
with each other.
and in an organized society. Now, when you have the duty bearers going against the very things and setting the example they are not supposed to set, the citizens then have the duty to recall them and say, this is not what we elected you to do for us. Not really.
It's true. It's true.
And sorry, carry on.
And the recall clause is very clear. But see, even applying that recall clause into practicality is so tedious, too technical, that sometimes it gives people the luxury of just making a decision of not being there. But like you have said, yes, I think Kenyans have come to a point of, well, it is our turn to tell you that we are the bosses. So that which is happening today is basically a lesson.
It's going forward.
going forward.
Yeah. Caroline, what's your message then as we conclude the conversation?
I think I can't overemphasize the importance as citizens to organize. We must organize. As Danpaul has said, this work can get difficult or can get hard. Caring and protecting our democracy is sacred, and it's hard work. Let's not deceive ourselves. It's hard work. But if we organize, many hands make work light. So we're going to help each other. We're going to support each other. And going back to the proverb of not gulping down the morsel,
Too much.
all at one go. It can be done, and it has been done, and we're seeing change, and that gives me hope.
It's unfolding right before our eyes. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for this conversation. Danpaul Andengah is a development practitioner in civic education and budget facilitation at URAIA, and Caroline Nyamu is a governance and human rights specialist. Our conversation has been on public participation on matters of budget, public finance management, particularly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.